So we're here with Bridget McLaughlin with EXP. Thanks
Correct.
for joining us. And today we are in Greece. I don't really like Greece. I think they got a bad real estate market. Let's go somewhere else.
I'd like to go to Italy.
Italy. So that still feels weird. New York's fun. Let's go to New York.
Let's go.
All right, so we're in New York City talking. We're experts because we have a microphone. So Bridget, you're an awesome realtor. So I know you got a lot of advice for people. You know, if somebody's thinking about, should I buy a house, should I not? Is it better to wait? What would you tell those people?
Right now, especially in this market that we're experiencing, I would tell people, if it makes sense for you to move, move. Don't wait on what you're thinking may happen, may not happen. If it makes sense, and finding out if it makes sense would be talking to the right realtor and the right lender. But with that being said, there are people, it's completely at the same time, even with rates higher, making sense for you to move. And then on the flip side, it's not making sense for certain people. So having a realtor and a lender that can tell you if it does make sense for you in your position, I think is what I would be speaking and wanting to tell anybody and everybody right now. Just because it doesn't have to be big, bad, and scary, but also you need to have someone that you can trust and trust their opinion and them say, hey, it doesn't make sense for you to move, or it does.
Gotcha. So I know you're hearing this. I'm hearing a lot of people say, well, maybe we ought to just wait until rates come down. What do you think? What would you like to tell those people?
So my first question to those people would be, where you're getting your information from. I think there are hopes and maybe predictions out there for all of us where they do come down some from where they are. But I think there's a big misconception out there right now that rates are going to come back down to where they were, which was 2 and 3%. And maybe you can tell people, do you ever think that we'll see that day again? Because go ahead.
Honestly, I don't think we'll see 2 and 3% again. Most of the economists that we follow, I'll say the same thing, that rates should come back down. But what does that mean? And I think if we see anything in the future with a 5 in front of it, then that would beat all historical, trends. I mean, right now we're still in a historical trend, but it just seems high because some people have 2 and 3% rates that some awesome lenders put them in when they could. But I think waiting on that is unrealistic. Yeah,
and I think it goes back to the question of if it makes sense for you right now to buy or sell, go ahead and do it, because if they do come back down, I know it's cliche and everybody says date the rate, marry the house, but to some degree there's a lot of truth to that, because if you are waiting for the rate to come back down, let's say to 4 and 5%, which in our world of people that would be a good healthy rate, when we see that happen, you're going to have all the the increase of all the buyers that now jump back into the market that want to start purchasing. They're going to drive the house of the price back up, and then now you're battling out the price of the house versus the rate. So at the same time, it can make a lot more sense to go ahead and buy the house at the higher rate if it makes sense for you, and then when those rates do hopefully come back down, go ahead and refinance, so that way you're not in bidding wars and experiencing what many buyers experienced when they had the 2 and 3% interest rates of bidding $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over asking, sometimes not getting the house, and still waiving inspections, waiving appraisals. So it's kind of like the flip side of the coin. There's good at it's a double-sided sword, if that makes sense. And there's good and bad to both sides of it.
So maybe your thoughts are, okay, if I wait on rates to go down, I might can save a little bit in rate, but I'm also probably going to be paying more for the house, which is going to offset what I'd save in the rate anyway.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, that increase in the house is real money.
Yeah.
It's real equity, and you're going to pay for that guaranteed at some point in time when you sell the house or need to access that equity.
Absolutely. And one thing, it's easy for us to sit here and talk about this and be like, oh, just go ahead and do it. But that's where I was saying, it has to make sense for you, because the payments right now on a house that, let's say, maybe you could afford a year ago are much higher. So that is a hard pill to swallow, of being like, hey, I'm buying this house, but my payment is double what it would have been 2 years ago or whatever else. And I get that. Like, even for me personally, looking at, different investments and different things, you're like, God, like if I would have done this a year ago, whatever. So that's what I'm saying. It has to make sense, and you have to be able to afford that higher payment until rates do come back down. But right now, I speak to buyers all the time, and we're like, hey, you need to save up some more money so you have some, some more cushion or whatever makes sense for you, because it's not very cut and dry. Don't base your decision today on if you're going to buy or not buy by looking in the rearview mirror. You need to look at like what is happening today, what is predicted to happen over the next year to 2 years, and does that make sense for you right here, right now? Hey,
wait, can we change locations? I'm not liking this one. Let's go maybe to like Maui. You want to do that?
Yes, put me on that beach.
We're there.
Let's go.
Nice.
One thing too, a misconception that I think I'm hearing right now in the industry and from buyers and people doing their own research to some degree, is not just waiting on the rates to come down, but house prices are coming down. House prices are coming down. And while that is true to some degree, of where you're saying maybe getting a better deal on a house, or people are pricing a little bit more conservatively because it's not, the beginning of 2021 where house prices are going 50,000 over asking and you can just name your price and get it. I think there's this misconception of people confusing that, of seeing house prices starting out more conservative and the price not driving up, and thinking that means that the house prices are going to come down. We're going to see a market shift, and house prices are going to drop by $100,000 on a $300,000 house, and that's not going to happen. There's no data of that happening, and if you're waiting on something like that to happen, in the meantime, you're waiting on that to happen because you want to try to get a lower rate. If you just would have gone ahead and purchased the house now, you could be building equity while waiting on that rate to come down. And then when that rate comes down, you go ahead and refinance, and now you already have instant equity in that house. Versus if you would have waited and got a lower rate, now you're paying more for that house because you've lost equity, because now you're competing against 10 other people.
So basically, you're saying don't try to time the market, because when you're winning over here on the rate, you're going to probably lose on the price of the house going up.
And that's where I said it's a double-edged sword. So you've got to pick, the rates are low, house prices are higher. House prices are higher, or rates are higher, house prices are lower. So you've got to pick of what makes sense for you right now.
Good advice.
So Ben, you've been in the industry for 50 years, right?
Since before you were born, probably. I don't.
Literally.
But I still look like I'm,
29. So with that said, keep thinking that. So with that said, you've seen a lot. You've seen the market change. You've worked with a lot of realtors, lenders, different things. What is your biggest pet peeve with realtors?
With realtors, this is an easy one. I think staying in their lane. I mean, and what I mean by that is leave the financing to the mortgage people. I mean, the lender sees the entire picture. There's a lot of things that we know we can't share with our realtors, and it's not a one size fits all. Too many people look at a mortgage like that's the one piece of the financial puzzle, when in fact it all works together.
Yeah.
They don't know what some of these clients might have told us in confidence and that we can't share. And so when they start asking financial questions, they just don't know any context. And so I'd say that was probably my biggest pet peeve. So you tell me. Now I'm going to flip it on you, because you've done a lot of transactions, even though you're 12, and you've worked with a whole lot of...
Hate on Bridget?
I'm sorry.
So trust me, my pet peeve on realtors. Maybe this should be my pet peeve on lenders.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask.
Okay,
so you've worked with a lot of lenders, some good, some bad, some really good ones. And what's your biggest pet peeve in working with lenders?
Lenders is over-promising. So just trying to secure a deal, saying, especially when the market was extremely competitive, of I can get this done in 28 days, I can get this done in 30 days. And they know that they can't get that done, and they still promise that they can get that done. And you go under contract, whether you're on the selling side or on the buying side, you go under contract with that. And then, you're 8 days in under contract, and hey, we're actually not going to be able to make this closing. And actually, I just had this happen with a client who I got pre-approved through you guys and they did not use you. And it was one of those that I just like, I wanted to shake them. I told them, I was like, this is what happens when you don't use a preferred lender that I tell you to use. You're free to do it, but you know, there are repercussions to it, because we had a situation where we were in basically a domino effect deal. So there was three different deals that were all contingent on the other one. And we went under contract having to meet a certain deadline in order to let the other two deals close. And lender promised that they could get it done in time. We're 10 days into the contract and they say, hey, we're not going to be able to make closing date by 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh no, you're going to have to, because there's two other deals that are going to fall apart.
Wow. If
you don't make this happen. So things like that of just, you know, lenders wanting to get the deal and saying, hey, we can get it done, and maybe there's a miscommunication of like they're not speaking to their underwriting team and making sure everybody's on the same page. So that would be my pet peeve with lenders, and that is why I love MortgageBanc, because they promise and they deliver every single time.
That's very well said. That's very well said. So, all right, so yeah, and another pet peeve of mine would be that we work with some realtors who really just don't control the transaction. And I have found that the best realtors out there control the transaction because they're trying to take care of their client. It's not that they're bossy, but they know who to use, not only as a lender, but who to use as a good home inspector that's really fair and really thorough. They know who to use for a title company, the closing attorney. And if they control the whole transaction, it tends to go off without a hitch, because at the end of the day, buying a house is it's a very emotional thing, and it's really big to people. And one little small hiccup can lead to a disastrous closing and terrible experience for the home buyer. So that would be a big pet peeve of mine. I know that these realtors, you know, when I say stay in their lane, they're meaning well. They're just trying to help the client. But there's just certain things that the client can't tell them, and I sure can't tell them because, you know, it's confidential. So I know they're trying to help, but they just don't know, you know, any context.
So one thing I want to say too about like staying in your lane is that goes for us as well. So I've had deals in the past where, you know, lenders have stepped in and started giving real estate advice and telling the client, ask for this on your repair inspection, or ask the agents to do this or that. And so when you get a team like working together, you know, and normally it's going to be your realtor that kind of puts that team together. So of bringing in the lender, bringing in the closing attorney, bringing in the inspector, whatever, and you are all collaborating and working together, you know, it's seamless and everybody does stay in their lane. But it's when, you know, people go and they start shopping that rate and they get this one lender that's, you know, and God knows where, and they bring them in because they've quoted them, you know, a $20 a month cheaper payment or whatever else. And that's every time I've seen when that happens, either something goes wrong when it comes to closing date, disastrous, or it comes to a lender giving advice and not staying in their lane. So I've experienced that being on the realtor side, just like you're saying you've experienced with, you know, being on the lending side.
You've been involved in a lot of transactions, and you know a lot of realtors too. And I love asking the question, you know, what do you think is the difference between a good realtor and a great realtor?
Oh, that is such a good question, because there are so many of us out there. In my opinion, it would be a realtor that chases the relationship, that does not chase the deal. One deal is just a deal and it's done. But if you chase the relationship and you're after, you know, a friendship and after somebody that you're really wanting to have a lifelong relationship with, that is what sets you apart. And that's what sets me apart, because I, you know, through transactions, I become friends with all of my clients, and I want to secure, you know, ensure and secure that I have that relationship and not just that one deal and it's done and dead. That way when their friend, their mother, their brother, whoever goes to buy, they're saying, hey, I have a friend in the business. I have an agent, you know, who walked me through the process, who dug deeper than just opening up a door and signing a contract with me. She asked me what was my plan, what did it look like for me in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and really walked me through the process. So in my opinion, that's what sets me apart, and that's what sets good agents from great agents apart, is people that really go after the relationship and not the deal.
So I think one of the differences is when a problem comes up. And oftentimes we run into problems, and it could be a title problem, an inspection problem, you know, just sellers not agreeing with purchasers. Nobody expects the problems, and people go into the home buying process with, you know, kind of like rose-colored glasses, and that's okay. But when there is a problem, that's when they can really tell the difference between a good realtor or a great realtor, and the same with the lender that they chose as well. So that's when the team is the most valuable, and you just never know when a problem is going to come up.
Yeah. And everybody thinks it's not going to happen to me. I mean, it's like human nature to think. You never think it's going to happen to you until it does. But once you're in this business long enough, problems happen. And at some point or another, it will be you or somebody that you know. So you have to make sure that you have not just a good realtor or not just a good lender. You have to have two that are married and working together to really get you through this process. Because if you have a great realtor that doesn't have a great relationship with the lender, I mean, it can be like oil and water sometimes, where things aren't going as smoothly. You're not on the same page. You're not used to working together. This is how this lender operates. This is how this realtor operates. Or when you get a relationship of two people that we work together endlessly. I know I'm going to get my updated calls from you every Tuesday. This is how I handle my transaction and vice versa. It just makes it more seamless. Less problems, less times for those things to come up of issues.
All right, so we've talked about home buyers. What's your biggest challenge in working with home sellers right now?
Oh, it's just trusting the process and trusting your realtor. So it really all just bubbles down to trust, because it has to do with pricing. It has to know with what looks good. So you're in your home, you're used to it, it's the way that you want it, you've got attachment to it, and it's set up the way that you like it. But when I come in, or a realtor comes in, and we're like, let's change this, let's do that, we are going off of what is in demand right now, and it may not be what you would like or what you would do, but it's what sells, and it's what brings the buyers. So really, it's trusting all around, from pricing to marketing the property, to making the property to a standard, the way that it should look and be most presentable to bring to market. So really, I would say just bubbling all of that down to trust in all different aspects of the selling process.
So yeah, there's one thing that I have learned in being in this business for 100 years, and that is, somebody can shop around and maybe they can save $200 in closing fees. 5 years from now, they'll never remember that. But the one thing they will remember is if they did not close on time. Mm-hmm. If they live out of boxes in their car for 2 weeks, they'll never, ever forget that. But they will long have forgotten that $200 they tried to save.
Yeah. People pay for convenience, and they pay for a service. I mean, we DoorDash, we shipped, we do all these different things, and we do it for convenience and for the luxury of it showing up and going smoothly and whatever it is. And it's the same thing when it comes to this of having a mortgage and working with a realtor, is having a process that is, you're going to go to bed and wake up and know that you're closing and it's going smoothly. And are you going to pay more than maybe this lender over here? Possibly some, but is it worth it, knowing that it is going to close and it's going to get to the closing table and everything is going to go smooth? To me, there's a price to that. And you have to ask yourself, because, we don't get everybody. For some people, they would rather save the 10 cents. And if that's you, go on, shop rates and do your thing, and you gamble trying to, save $20 or not. But if you're somebody that wants efficiency, somebody that appreciates consistency and can get you to the closing table, what value does that have on it for you as a buyer? Because for me, and as the realtor, I will pay any price to make sure that happens.
All right, Bridget, so we've talked about everybody buying a house, but does it really always make sense? I mean, truthfully, it doesn't make sense for everybody to buy a house right now. Do you see that?
Yes, and actually, just probably the last month or so, we had that deal with a past client of both of ours, where I had sold them the house, and they were looking at trying to make some changes and make a move, and they had a mother-in-law moving in with them, and it just did not make financial sense for them to move. And that's where it goes back to having somebody that you trust, and somebody that will tell you what is in your best interest and not in their best interest. Because I could have told her, hey, yeah, let's move, let's put you over here, let's do that, but it didn't make sense, and it wasn't the best time for her to move. And so I told her that, and that was a situation where you lost a deal, I lost a deal, but I have my client's best interest, you have your client's best interest, and it doesn't always work out in our favor.
Perfect.